Hey, how's it going everyone, and welcome back to the podcast of Justice. Okay, so this is only the second time I've ever made one of these. I've been procrastinating about making this episode for, well, pretty much since the first one came out, but in particular over the last few weeks. The reason I really stopped doing it after the first episode was because I started live streaming shortly afterwards, and I was like, well, you know, if I've got something to talk about in the games industry, I can always do that on my live streams. Which I do, but it's different. You know, if you're playing a video game and trying to interact with the chat, you can't go into as much detail as you want to do about certain topics. At least I can't, because then something suffers. Either my gameplay suffers, or I start ignoring people in the chat, blah, blah, blah. So we're bringing the podcast back, and I'm hoping this is going to be a regular thing, but I'm not going to force it out. You know, if there's nothing really too interesting to talk about, I'm not going to make a podcast for no bloody reason, but they will hopefully be semi-regular. We shall see. Now, quick heads up. Partly this podcast, or should I say probably the majority of this podcast, maybe like 2/3, 3/4, is going to be about video games and the games industry and just my thoughts on different things. Partly it's going to be about pro wrestling, in particular WWE. So if you don't care about wrestling, feel free to just, you know, turn the podcast off when we get to that point, because it will be video games and then wrestling. I don't really want to split them into two separate podcasts. That could happen at some point in the future. I don't know. This is very much a trial. We shall see how it goes. And also, I just woke up, so if my voice doesn't sound quite there, that is why I'm still kind of trying to get it back. Gotta warm up the vocal cords, you know? Gross. Alright, so the first thing on the video game agenda, and I should also point out, since I've been procrastinating about making this for a few weeks now, a few of these topics are a few weeks old, so those ones I'm going to try and not go into too much detail on, because again, they're getting a little bit old, and you've probably heard about them by now, and blah blah blah, but I do want to give my thoughts and feelings on them, plus they're still relevant, you know? Even if, well, you'll see. Anyway, okay, so, speaking of old things, Bethesda, a few weeks ago now, raised the price of their season pass. I don't remember what the price was. I think they've raised it by $10, something like that. I think it was like $20 or $30, and it's now $30 or $40, something like that. So it's about $10 more. So, a lot of people seem to be kind of really pissed about this. As far as I understand, if you purchased, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you purchased the season pass, for the old price, you didn't pay any extra afterwards. Like, you got it for the old price. So, in a way, that's a good deal for the people that already bought it, right? I mean, that doesn't usually happen. Usually, if you buy something early, like pre-ordering, you get fucked over. This is probably one of the few instances in which you've actually saved some money. Debatably, I mean, it depends what deal you got, where you bought it from, if it goes on sale in the near future, maybe even before the DLCs come out, I don't know. But personally, I don't see what's wrong with this. They've basically said that the reason that they've raised the price is because they're adding more DLC or more expensive DLC than they were intending to in the first place, so this is to cover the cost of development and blah blah blah. Okay, I don't really see a problem with this. Like, you can always just not buy, if you haven't bought it yet, you can always not buy it and wait for it to go on sale, or if you have bought it already, you probably got it for the lower price. Like, I really don't see what the big deal is with this. Again, if they'd raised the price and then charged you extra, I could entirely understand that. Like, if you'd already bought it for the old price, they raised it and said, okay, now you owe, gotta hit my microphone, now you owe us $10 or something. Yeah, that'd be kind of shitty. I understand that, but I don't think that's the case. So, that's my opinion. I don't see why people are so bent out of shape about it. Whatever. But yeah, again, that's one of the older topics that I didn't want to spend too long on. Speaking of Elder Scrolls, kind of brings me to my next point. What is the next Elder Scrolls going to be? Where is it going to be set? When? So, since Fallout 4 is out now, Bethesda will no doubt be turning their attention to the next Elder Scrolls game. It's going to be Elder Scrolls 6. Now, we've already had them set in, let's see, Daggerfall? Where the hell was, there was Daggerfall, I think Arena was the first one. Doesn't really matter. It's like Arena and Daggerfall. Arena is not an area in Tamriel, as far as I know. So you've got Daggerfall, Morrowind, Cyrodiil, which is where Oblivion was set, and Skyrim. So there's still, like, Black Marsh, Hammerfell, which is where the Red Guards come from, right? And I'm trying to think what else. I felt like there was one more major area. Black Marsh is where the Argonians come from. Oh, that's right. Oh, what the hell is it called? You know the deserts where the cat people come from? It escapes me right now. But they've basically got the desert with the cat people. They've got the Black Marsh for the Argonians. Oh, there's also Orsinium. And they've got Hammerfell for the Red Guards. For some reason, I get the feeling it's going to be called the Elder Scrolls 6 Orsinium. Honestly, just because it sounds kind of badass. And I honestly feel like a large part of the reason that Skyrim sold so well is because they went for the badass marketing. Like, the big tough Nordic guy and the spiky helmet and dragons and, manly stuff. That sells. Whether you like it or not, it does. Skyrim, as far as I understand, and again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure has outsold Oblivion and Morrowind. Certainly Morrowind. I mean, Morrowind's a fucking amazing game. I'm playing through it right now on the channel. I love that game to death. Even though it's really old and really outdated in many ways, it's still a great game. So when it came out, it would have been mind-blowing. So, yeah, basically I feel like the marketing of, the big burly man and the manly stuff with the fire and the flames and the dragons, I feel like that was a big reason that Skyrim sold so damn well. Plus, they just put a lot more money into marketing it than they did Oblivion and Morrowind and blah blah blah. So, I feel like with Orsinium, you got big burly orcs. Orsinium just sounds like a cool word. You could have, I don't know, I can just imagine the cover, I can imagine it. So that's what I feel like. I feel like the next one's going to be Orsinium, simply because I feel like that's going to be the easiest one for them to market, I mean, yes, the Scalies are going to love the Argonians, the Furries are going to love the Catlands, but you got to understand, the Furries and the Scalies are the minority. Like, they're a minority, they're not the majority. The majority likes the big burly men and the flames and shit. So, that's my opinion. I feel like they're gonna go with Orsinium. Feel free to let me know what you think. Okay, so. Oh, by the way, should probably also cover, when do I think it's gonna come out? Because some people have been saying they feel like it's gonna come out sort of 2017, because, they've got separate studios working on that and Fallout. I don't think that's the case. I really don't. If you look at the history, Morrowind came out in 2002. Oblivion came out in 2006. Then you had Fallout 3 come out in 2008. Yeah, that's only 2 years after Oblivion. But then you look at, after that, 2008, Skyrim didn't come out until 2011. And then even longer than that, right at the end of 2015, Fallout 4 came out. Like, if anything, they're taking longer between games, not less time. So, I would be very surprised to see it before 2018, maybe even 2019. Though, frankly, they'll probably still beat, Kingdom Hearts 3 coming out. Now in development. Fuck you, Square Enix. Alright, so next topic on the agenda. Final Fantasy IX, speaking of Square Enix, has recently been released on iOS and Android. Now, that's not the most interesting news in the world, but what I did find interesting is that if you go on the Android... Well, I don't have an Android, I have an iPhone, but if you go on the store and you look, they have Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. What the fuck? Why is 8 the black sheep? I don't understand it. Again, I'm doing 8 on the channel right now. I love that game, yes. There are some very poor design decisions in that game. Pretty much all of them surrounding the combat, like the junctioning system and the junctioning system. Pretty much the junctioning system. The combat is still serviceable. It's not great, it's very old, it's outdated. But the rest of the game to me is fucking amazing. I love the story, I love the characters, I love the world that it's set in. I love the card game to death. I've spent episodes where I've just played the card game for like 30, 40 minutes. Probably drives people insane, but I like the card game. I really feel like Final Fantasy VIII is a great game with a poor combat system. But I don't feel like the poor combat system is poor enough to ruin the game experience for me personally. Maybe it does for some people. But yeah, I just noticed that 8 was the only one that got skipped out and wasn't put on iOS. God damn it, 8, I love you, even if no one else does. Oh, and speaking of Final Fantasy IX, that's actually going to be coming out on the PC soon, I don't know exactly when. And, I'll be getting it, and I'll probably, when I finish 8, maybe not right away, but at some point I do intend to do 9 as well, because 9 is another amazing overlooked game. Not as overlooked as 8, but also overlooked. I think as you played with a monkey boy that had like a truncheon of love in his pocket. If you don't believe me, go look up a picture of Zidane from Final Fantasy IX. Look at his dagger in his pocket. There is a penis head on the end of that dagger. That thing doubles as a dildo. It is a truncheon of love. He's up to some weird kinky shit. Plus he's a monkey boy, so I don't know. Anyway, so also more old news here. We'll try and get this out of the way quickly. You may remember PT, the playable teaser for Silent Hills, what was going to be the next in the Silent Hills franchise before Konami decided to be Konami and just canned it for no fucking reason, even though it would have made them so much money. God, Konami, I hate you. So, PT. Kojima's working on that, Kojima being the guy behind Metal Gear Solid. He was also working on it with Del Toro, and Norman Reedus was going to be the main character, basically. Well, not Norman Reedus himself, but it was in his visual image, and he was almost certainly going to do the voice acting as well. Del Toro, for those that don't know, he's the guy behind a lot of, I think, Spanish. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong once again. I think Spanish, like, horror films and stuff like that. I believe he did Pan's Labyrinth, I think, which was not really a horror film, but I've watched it, and it's pretty damn good. Right, so anyway, basically all three of those were going to make Silent Hills together. I mean, Norman Reedus, again, was just going to do the acting, but you know what I mean, like, three major names. Norman Reedus, again, for those that don't know, plays Daryl in The Walking Dead, who is the most popular character on that show, without a fucking doubt. So people love Norman Reedus, is what I'm getting at. But of course, again, they got cancelled by Konami. Now, reasonably recently, Kojima met, or rather, we don't know that he met exactly, but he was in the same location as Del Toro, and then a few weeks later was in the same location as Norman Reedus, or the other way around. I think I got it right the first time, but it doesn't really matter. So it seems like he's probably at least had talks with them. And we know now that he's working for Sony, or at least they're publishing his game, his newest game that we don't know what it is yet, blah blah blah. So a lot of people are speculating that maybe they're going to be making a horror game together, kind of like PT, but with a different name, blah blah blah, because of course Konami still hold the rights to the name Silent Hills. But they can still make their own horror game that's very similar. So that's what a lot of people are holding out hope for. However, in an interview recently, Kojima said he's not going to make a game like PT because it brings back the bad memories of working at Konami. It wasn't like word for word what he said, but it was close enough. So, I don't know what to think anymore. I mean, it looked like it was going to be so good, and then he's been in the same place as Del Toro, the same place as Norman Reedus, and yeah, he comes out and says, I mean, maybe it's a red herring, maybe he's trying to throw us off the trail or something, I really don't know. But it's entirely possible that he could still make a game with Del Toro and Norman Reedus in it that isn't a horror game exactly, like, or is a horror game but not like PT. I don't know, man. All I know is I want to play as Norman Reedus in a game made by Del Toro and Kojima. That's all I want in this world. I ain't even really into horror games, and I really want to play that. Oh, okay, so next news is Dark Souls 3 again. Kind of old. Released 11 minutes of brand new and brutal gameplay, it says here. I will link that in the description. I'll try and remember to link a bunch of things here. It looks good. Basically, they showed what I think is the intro to the game. You may remember if you played Dark Souls 1, at the very beginning, when you're in the cells, after the big cutscene where they talk about, like, in fact, is that the same chick? Hang on a minute, let me think. No, it is, isn't it? You know in the beginning cutscene of Dark Souls 1 where they show you, like, Seath the Scaleless and blah-de-blah, and then you're in the cell and the camera's panning and there's, like, a rat running along, and the chick's like, yes, indeed. The undead were corralled and led to the north and blah-blah-blah. That chick. Pretty damn sure the exact same voice actress was narrating this trailer. Was awesome. It looked like very similar to the opening cutscene of Dark Souls 1. Like, they sort of introduced the bad guys. I don't remember any of their names or much of anything. I just remember it looking awesome, because again, it was a few weeks ago that I watched this. But yeah, I am super excited for that game. Honestly, and I've been very vocal about this, I still think Dark Souls 2 is a very fun, good game. And again, after playing Dragon's Dogma recently, it makes me realize how that game could have been so much worse. Because again, Dragon's Dogma is one of those games that is half of an amazing game and half of a super shitty game. Like the combat, climbing on enemies and shit in Dragon's Dogma, great. But then you get told to, like, run around a town and search for this little girl who's playing hide and seek with no map marker. I mean, it's hide and seek, so I kind of get that. But then she bugs out and she's not even there, so I waste 45 minutes, and then I go to leave the town after getting another quest and the game crashes on me. So, you know, Dragon's Dogma, fuck you, basically. Even though I half love you. It's a weird relationship I have with that game. But anyway, my point is, Dark Souls 2 could have been much worse. It's still a good game, even though it gets very shit on, but at the same time, it was the sequel to Dark Souls 1, you know? One of the most revered games of all time. Like, yes, it's still got kind of a niche audience and a cult following, but people that respect that game really respect that game. Like, that, if you understand Dark Souls and you know what it did right, you really understand how well made that game was. Yes, I mean, there are things that aren't perfect about it, sure, like a couple of the boss fights really suck, like Ceaseless Discharge and the Bed of Chaos, blah blah blah, and the game got a little bit lazy towards the end after you beat Ornstein and Small. There was a lot of copy-pastes of bosses, and a lot of the areas felt unfinished and blah blah blah, but still, at least the first half of the game was amazingly well made. The very end of the game, with the kiln and Gwen and blah blah blah, and the subtle way the story is told to you and you can piece it all together, the world is so well designed. So, essentially what I'm saying is, Dark Souls 2, yes, when compared to Dark Souls 1, which in my opinion is an imperfect masterpiece, was a letdown, but still it was a good game, and Dark Souls 3 looks a lot more like Dark Souls 2. Also, Dark Souls 1, sorry. Also, the combat looks very similar to Demon Souls in terms of the speed. A lot of people are comparing it to Bloodborne. I think it's probably because they didn't play Demon Souls. If you look at Demon Souls, look at Dark Souls 3, looks very similar to me. So I'm very excited. That's basically what I'm getting at. I am very excited. Again, I will link the trailer in the description should you have not seen it. Okay, oh god, here we go. So, you probably know now that Hitman is going to be split into chunks. The new Hitman game, which is coming out, I believe... Actually, isn't the first part out in March or April or something like that? And the first part's only going to be the prologue of the game and the Paris map. And from what I've heard, apparently it's really good. The Paris map is huge, like probably the biggest level they've ever had in a Hitman game, or at least one of them. There's tons of different things you can do, tons of optional objectives, millions of different ways. Alright, that might be an exaggeration, but lots of different ways that you can assassinate your targets. And just, generally, they've refined the gameplay, and it looks beautiful, and blah blah blah. Here's the thing. My very first Hitman game I ever played was number 2. Silent Assassins, I think it's called. Loved that game to death, completed it multiple times. Really, really good game. Didn't play Blood Money, played Contracts, which I believe was 3. I think Blood Money was 4. Again, I might be wrong. It doesn't really matter that much. But anyway, so I played 2, completed it many times, played Contracts, be that 2 or 3 times, something like that. Didn't like it as much as number 2, but I still liked it. I remember there was like a weird bar or something you go into in Contracts, and everyone in there was dressed in like a gimp suit. And there was a bunch of, chicks pole dancing and chicks making out. It was fucking amazing. I mean, for my little 12-year-old brain, or however old I was probably older than that, to be honest with you. But yes, point is, I really like the Hitman franchise. I played, again, didn't play Blood Money, played Absolution, the most recent one. I liked Absolution. Didn't like it anywhere near as much as I liked the previous ones, which I think was the general consensus from most people. Again, a little bit like the Dark Souls 2 thing, like, still a really good game, but not as good as its predecessors, which generally in a franchise you want things to improve, not get worse. This seems to be a return to form from what people are saying, but of course, being a Square Enix game, we know how dickish Square are these days, like with Final Fantasy 7, they're splitting it up into parts. So, I mean, here's the thing. I don't think there's any need to split it up. There's been an argument like, oh, well, maybe it's going to be better for the game, and blah, blah, blah. I don't see how it could be better, to be honest with you. It's just a way of them making more money. If you think anything else, then you're very naive. This is Square Enix we're talking about. They cut things into pieces. It's been rumored as well that they've cut the newest Deus Ex Mankind Divided, ironic name, that apparently that game was intended to be much longer, but they've split it into like 2 or 3 games. So, yeah, Square, just stop it. Stop being Square Enix. I hate you. I hate you. Squaresoft was the shit. And then they got bought out by a company called Enix or something Enix, and then they combined their names and became Square Enix, and since then it's just going, whoop, steadily downhill. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the new Hitman game. I will almost certainly wait until all of the parts have been released, which seems like it's going to take a full year or something like that. That sucks. But I'm sure when it comes out, it will be a good game. I just don't want to give, Square Enix a shit ton of money that they don't deserve, quite frankly, and I don't want to play it in chunks, because that seems annoying to me. It makes a little bit more sense, though again, they're just doing it for money, but at least with a game like Final Fantasy VII, if they're splitting into like 3 chunks, that game's long as fuck. Whereas a couple of maps from Hitman, yeah, it might take you like 5-10 hours if you try and do everything. That's still like a lot less than the, 20, 30 that you could probably spend on like a third of Final Fantasy VII. That's at least a 100-hour game if you really put your mind to it. Again, it depends how much they change and add and whatnot. With the remake, they have said they're going to be adding a lot. So, I guess we'll see. My point is, a huge chunk of Final Fantasy VII is going to last you a lot longer than a couple of maps from a Hitman game. But hey, like I said, when it fully comes out, I'll play it. Alright, next up on the agenda, speaking of video games, there's probably a lot of you don't know this. There's actually an Attack on Titan game coming out. I believe it's coming out on PS3, PS4, and I don't know what else. I don't think PC. Seen some gameplay of it. I'll try and put that in the description as well, should I remember to do so. Don't have too much to say about it. I am about halfway through watching Season 1 of Attack on Titan. I think they've announced Season 2. It's not out yet. So I've watched about half of the current episodes. It's a good anime, but it's fucking weird. Here's the thing. As someone who doesn't watch anime very much, it's strange to me. For example, they often parody it. Like, how do I describe this? Sometimes the characters get really sort of angry or emotional or worked up, and, you know, they have their little anime faces, like, their mouths, you know, flopping around like wet fish to express how, you know, worked up they are. And I would imagine with the original... I'm watching the English dub. I would imagine with the original Japanese voice acting, it'd probably be a lot more bearable. But when there's the English dub, it's basically just someone going, I will not forget this. I will avenge you. I swear to God, if it's the last thing I do, I will avenge you. And they go fucking insane. I'm like, damn, son, calm down. Like, they're very shouty in the anime. It's weird, man. It's weird. So, I really like Attack on Titan so far. It's got some very cool concepts going on. There's a very strange twist a few episodes in. I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about, and I won't spoil it for those of you that don't. But yes, I would recommend it, but weird as fuck. And the voice acting in English is, for the most part, pretty crap. But I think that's just generally what people say. But yeah, anyway, so there's an Attack on Titan game coming out. It looks like an RPG, heavily combat-focused, sort of like Devil May Cry-ish from what I can tell. Like, it's all about you sort of swinging around like Spider-Man, chopping down the Titans and shits. Looks cool, man. Looks cool. Like I said, I'll link it in the description. Okay. Now, speaking of video games, because yes, that's what we do here, apparently, there's also another game coming out that I'm sure a lot of you haven't heard of. It's called Neo. N-I, little dashy thing, O-H. At least I'm pretty sure that's how it's spelled. Again, I'll try and link that in the description as well. Neo is coming out, I think, exclusively on the PS4, or maybe just console exclusive. I don't think it's coming out on PC, at least it hasn't been announced yet, is what I'm saying. Neo looks very cool. It looks... Okay, here's the thing. They've obviously taken some inspiration from Dark Souls. Like, I believe there's the whole, like, bloodstain mechanic going on and some other stuff, and you can parry and riposte. But equally, it also looks very Onimusha. If you've never seen Onimusha, go look it up on YouTube. Just type it in. Onimusha. It was made by, I think, Capcom. Was it Capcom? I don't remember. I think it was made by the Resident Evil guys. That's Capcom, isn't it? I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I think there's like 3 Onimusha games, maybe more than that. I definitely played the first 3, loved all of them. Really fun games where basically you're in like feudal Japan and there's weird demons in rice hats and shit. Very cool game. So it looks, in visual style and the way the enemies look and stuff like that, and the setting, it's like feudal Japan with demons and shit. So that's what makes me think of Onimusha. But again, they've got the whole like parrying, riposting, rolling around, taking your time, being methodical, and, you know, super punishing damage that, like, when people get hit in these trailers, they're taking tons of damage. So it looks punishing like Dark Souls is. And you've also got the whole, you know, bloodstain mechanic and some other stuff, I think. Like, I think there might be sort of the similar, like, bloodstains of other Fallen players going on. Like, not just your own one, I think. Again, it's been a while since I saw the trailer. But yeah, I'll try and remember to link that in the description as well. I recommend you check it out. It looks fucking awesome, especially if you're into Dark Souls and or Onimusha. I'm excited for that. Okay, so, yeah. Other old news. The Binding of Isaac Rebirth was to be released on the iOS store. Apparently, Apple turned around and said, no, you can't release it here because child violence. Weird, man. Very weird. I mean, I don't know. Like, I kind of understand... Well, no, I don't really. Because the only child in that game, really, is the main character. Because the rest of them are, minor spoilers here, I guess, supposed to be in the character's head. Like, they're all visions. And none of them really... Well, I guess some of them do look like children, but they're demons and shit, you know? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Plus, there's... Basically, if what they're saying is like, oh, the main character can get hurt, so that's child violence, there's so many video games on the iOS store that fall into that category. Like Limbo, for example. You play as a child in Limbo, you can get your head ripped off and shit in that game. You can fall on spikes. Like, that game is brutal. Doesn't make any sense to me, man. So I just wanted to cover that briefly and just say, Apple, you're stupid. There you go. Alright, so, this one's even more recent. We're getting more and more recent as we go through this. Again, when I make future podcasts, assuming this is a regular thing, I'll try and be more up to date, but I've been procrastinating about this thing for weeks. Next up, apparently, they're going to be releasing Destiny 2. Now, I haven't even played Destiny 1 because it's only on consoles, and you know what I'm like. If it's on console, I just can't be bothered because I hate setting the thing up. It's paying the dick to stream, to record, blah, blah, blah. Destiny 2. They haven't really said anything about it. I think it's coming out soon, like sort of 2017-ish, or like maybe even the end of this year. I think like early 2017 is kind of what I heard, but again, I don't really remember. But it's soon-ish. Considering when Destiny came out, they were talking about how they wanted to be a game, sort of like an MMO that lasted for like 10 years with constant updates and shits. I just really don't like what they've done with Destiny. Again, I haven't played it, but I hear nothing but bad things. Like, I mean, yeah, the Taken King was apparently good DLC, but they were talking about how there were these new emotes, and you had to pay like $30 for the emotes, which essentially I think came with the Taken King, and originally, you couldn't just buy the Taken King as an expansion, you had to buy the game plus the Taken King, so if you wanted the DLC, you had to buy the game again for like full price. So many little shitty things they've been doing with that game are just like really fucking over their customers. Plus, when the game came out, as far as I understand, there was almost no content in it. Like, especially for a game that's supposed to be an MMO where you can do tons of stuff and keep playing. Like, I don't know, man. Like, if you enjoy Destiny, more power to you, but usually I want to get wined and dined before I get fucked, basically. Okay, and then some other sort of video game related news. Apparently there is a Sonic movie coming out at some time in, I believe, the near future. Don't really know much about it, except that I've heard apparently it's live action mixed with CGI, so basically like Space Jam. Like real people, and then, you know, animated CGI Sonic and shit. Alright, let's go into this. I'm gonna put my phone down and everything. This is serious business now. Sonic has now been good for years. Sonic like 1, 2, 3, Sonic and Knuckles, they were good. But they were a long time ago. Yeah, Sonic Generations, it was alright. Sonic Colors, it was alright. The thing is, Sonic Boom is a goddamn disaster. They haven't made a genuinely good, like, hey, this is really good, you need to go out and buy it. Like, even if you're not a fan. This will make you a fan. They haven't made a Sonic game like that in so fucking long. That dude used to be the mascot of Sega. Sega used to make consoles. They don't make consoles anymore because they fucked up so bad with Sonic that people stopped buying their consoles. It would be like the equivalent of Nintendo. Well, Nintendo have like 3 major sort of mascot thingies or franchises, I guess. They have Zelda, they have Pokemon, and they of course have Mario. Yeah, the Mario games, a lot of people don't care about them anymore. A lot of people stop really caring after sort of Super Mario World. I'm in that bracket as well. I could still play the new ones. They're still fine, but they don't really appeal to me. I don't know why. But I still love Zelda, and I still love Pokemon, so Nintendo had that going for them. Sega only really had Sonic. They had one decent franchise to focus on, and they fucked it. Like, they bent it over, and they shafted the hell out of his blue ass. Why are you making a movie with this motherfucker? Let him lie, alright? Let Sonic die in peace. He's a stupid blue hedgehog who hasn't been cool for a long time. Fuck you, Sonic, you're terrible. Okay, I'm calm. Okay, now for some actually recent, I know, shocking video game news. Apparently, and I've just read this because I go on a video game website to get my news. That's how, professional I am and shit. Tom Clancy's The Division final map will be 6 times bigger than the size of the beta map. Let's see if this actually came from Ubisoft. Ubisoft recently held an open beta on the game, blah, 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 blah. I can't find anything, you son of a bitch. I don't want to read that right now, but that seems to be like an official statement from Ubisoft, though I can't find any confirmation. That sounds cool. I've seen some gameplay of The Division. I don't know, man. It doesn't really look like my thing. It looks a little bit sort of Destiny, Borderlands, Diablo-ish. None of which I really enjoy. They're not really my thing. As someone who loves loot, and I've spoken about this in several games that I've streamed recently, like Dragon's Dogma, Witcher 3, Fallout 4. All 3 of them. I love loot when it's important. For example, if you find a new gun that's good, you're like, yeah, new gun. Upgrade. Or if you find like a rare piece of equipment that's good, like armor or like a magical artifact or something. It depends what game you're playing. And, you know, like a rare material that you can use to maybe make, like, a better gun or a better piece of armor. And I mean a rare material. My problem with games like Fallout 4, Witcher 3, etc., and Diablo, blah, 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 is that you just get loot hand over fist and it doesn't mean anything. Like, for example, let's use Fallout 4, because I really think that's probably the best example of that. When they were talking about Fallout 4 before it came out, almost said Tom Clancy. What the fuck? What's his damn name? Oh, it's like an H in there. What's your name? I can't remember the guy. I'm gonna look it up. Hang on a minute. Never mind, I don't need to look it up. I just remember Todd Howard. I knew there was an H in there. Anyway, so Todd Howard, you know, at E3 when they were talking about Fallout 4, they were like, yeah, here's the thing. In other Fallout games and shit, there's clutter around, and you can pick it up, and that's cool. But a lot of it didn't do anything. In Fallout 4, everything will have a use. That was what they said. It was like a big selling point. They were like, yeah, everything can be crafted into something. Everything is in a component you can use to make something. And at first you're like, hey, that's cool. Everything's got a use. But when you play the game in practice, what that means is you need to pick up fucking everything. You're like, there's an alarm clock. Put that in my pocket. There's a tin can. Put that in my pocket. There's a toothbrush. Gonna need that. There's a toy alien. Gonna need that. There's a fucking, like, I don't know, a wicker basket. Gonna need that. There's an eyeball that fell out of a man's eye, like a glass eye. Gonna need that because I can turn that into glass. There's like a lead pipe. I'm gonna need that because I can turn that into steel. Like, fucking hell. And the thing is, if you had unlimited carry weight in that game, cool, you can just pick all that shit up. It would still be boring and monotonous, but at least you wouldn't have to deal with the carry weight issue afterwards. And that's my other problem. It's boring and monotonous to pick up everything all of the fucking time, because the loot then becomes unimportant. You're just shoveling everything into your pockets like a fat kid in the candy store. But on top of that, after you've shoved everything into your pockets like a fat kid in the candy store, it's like you're over encumbered, bitch. And you're like, well, goddamn. And then you gotta go through all of your shit and like, what do I not really need? What can I drop? Oh, I need that because that turns into glass, and I need glass, and that turns into like fucking nails, and I need nails because you need tons of fucking screws and shit like that. Like, Jesus Christ. So, I don't know, I guess the point I'm making is shooters are not really my thing because they give you too much booty. The Division seems a lot lighter on that from what I've seen. So, maybe I'd like it. But equally, the shooting doesn't look that satisfying in the Division. I, again, haven't played it, so I'd have to tread. And it is a Ubisoft game, and usually Ubisoft are really good when it comes to shooters. Far Cry is very popular, very fun shooter. Rainbow Six, I'm addicted to that game. The shooting in Rainbow Six is fucking amazing. I mean, the hit detection's a little fucked up sometimes, but for the most part, it's really good. The sounds... Again, it's another thing. I'm just gonna go on this tangent right now. Go play Rainbow Six, or go watch one of my Rainbow Six videos. Listen to some of the gun sounds. They sound like you're shooting a gun. Go watch like some of my Fallout 4 stuff. Holy shit. It's like... And this is without like a fucking silencer on. It sounds terrible. It's like a mosquito farting. Fix your gun sounds, Bethesda. Holy shit. But anyway, yeah, so apparently the map for the Division's gonna be 6 times the size, and Jason ain't really a fan of shooting and looting because too much loot. Again, I like booty, I really do, but I think too many video games, especially lately, have been really overdoing it. Alright, so, for those that don't know, I believe it was yesterday, maybe the day before yesterday. What day is it today? It's the 27th of February. I think it was on the 26th. Might have been the 25th. It was one of those 2 days. Nintendo rather held a, I can't remember what the hell they call it, but like a conference thing, like a Nintendo conference. And they announced new Pokemon games called Sun and Moon. I don't think they've announced a release date or anything like that, or really any information on them. But hey, new Pokemon games, I'm excited. I have my 3DS next to me right now. I still have to finish Omega Ruby. I will, but I need to get around to that, because those are some fun-ass games. I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't really like Pokemon, it's like a kid's thing and blah blah blah. You could not be more fucking wrong. Holy shit. If you ever get into like the IV, EV training and all that shit of Pokemon, that game goes so in depth with how you can customize your Pokemon to make literally the perfect one. Like getting the right nature, the right traits, the right gender. Breeding them to get like moves from when they hatch from the egg so that they start with moves that they couldn't otherwise learn. And then leveling them up by fighting the correct Pokemon because they give you the right hidden values or whatever the hell they're called. HVs? No, they're called IVs, aren't they? Individual values? Oh no, it's some weird shit like that. But basically, you kill the right Pokemon, or KO the right Pokemon, you get the right stats, so that when you level up, you'll gain the most strength that you possibly can, so essentially you can make like, a Lucario with the maximum strength that a Lucario can possibly possess. Stuff like that. It was why, for example, when I got Mewtwo on Red and Blue back in the day, and I spent forever in Mewtwo's cave beating up Chauncey's with it, my Mewtwo ended up having over 400 HP, because Chauncey gives you HP, secretly, as a boost, when you level up. So I ended up getting tons of HP on my Mewtwo, and I never knew why. I don't know. Again, I don't understand why people dismiss Pokemon games. They're fucking amazing, so I'm very excited for Sun and Moon. But yes, they are definitely running out of names, like X and Y, Sun and Moon, Red, Blue, Yellow, Pink, Green, Orange, Purple, Gold, Silver, Platinum, Diamond, Pearl. Like, what the fuck? It's getting kind of ludicrous. But hey, I'm into it. Anyway, so I think that's probably going to do it for the video game section. So I'm going to talk about pro wrestling a little bit. So if you want to end the video here because you don't care about pro wrestling, feel free to do so. But hey, even if you don't, this might still be interesting to you. Because hey, these are interesting topics. Even if you are not into pro wrestling, you might find something that catches your ear here. I almost said catches your eye, but that won't make any sense. But hey, if you are leaving now, thank you for joining me, and if you could give the video a thumbs up, that will help to promote it, and it will show me that you want more of this, because again, this is more of a test than anything to see if people are into these podcasts, and I will try and get them up on, like, iTunes, Podbean, fucking Stitcher, whatever the hell people use, if people really want me to upload them on websites, so they're not just on YouTube. But again, it depends how many people want to listen to it, so do let me know. Alright, so again, we're going to move on to the wrestling stuff now. Okay, so much like the video game section, this part is going to start off with some slightly out-of-date news, like a couple of weeks old, and then we're going to move on to some very recent stuff. So let's start with the old and get to the new. Daniel Bryan retired recently. Again, it was a couple of weeks ago now. For those that don't know who Daniel Bryan is, he's a little tiny leprechaun of a man with a beard. He looks like a lumberjack. And he is, without a doubt, one of the most popular wrestlers of all time. At least in recent years. I guess that wouldn't really count as all time. He's one of the most popular wrestlers in recent memory, we'll say that. And the reason for that is because, I mean, I've never really been a huge fan of Daniel Bryan, though I've always respected him. Basically, he doesn't look like John Cena. You know, he's not humongous and muscly and 6'5" and a beautiful man. Not that I think John Cena is beautiful, but apparently women do. I don't get it. I think he looks a bit like Wallace from Wallace and Gromit. I might put a picture on the screen or something if I can remember to do so right now, because I think it's a pretty good comparison, but that's who he reminds me of. But hey, who am I to speak, because I'm the most beautiful man in the world, but whatever. So anyway, he doesn't look like a wrestler, but he is a good wrestler, and he loves wrestling, so people respected him, plus he was kind of himself. Which is not something, frankly, you see very often in wrestling. For example, even John Cena, who is largely himself, still comes out with his, like, hustle, loyalty, respect, I never give up. I do it for the children, and like, I don't know, man. Like, fuck off, Cena. God damn it. But anyway, so my point is, he was an everyman. He was a good wrestler. He knew what he was doing. He had a certain amount of charisma. It was weird. Like, he was not, I wouldn't really describe him as the most charismatic man, but he could still talk. And he could, I don't know, he was one of those people that could, bring you to his side. With what he said, you were like, yeah, I believe that. I believe that what you're saying is genuine, so I respect you. So people started to respect him, and then he became insanely popular. He did have sort of his own catchphrases and stuff like that, like his yes chants got extremely popular, and then he turned into a heel, which, for those that don't know, means a bad guy in wrestling. And when he was a heel, he started chanting no instead, and, angrily chanting no at the crowd, and people still loved it, because it's Daniel Bryan. And he was in a tag team with Kane, and, they had good chemistry, blah, blah, blah. The guy had a great career, considering how short of a career he had in the WWE, though he was around for like 15 years or something before that. But essentially, yes, he retired recently, and the reason he had to retire was because a doctor, I don't know if it was a WWE doctor or some other doctor, essentially told him that, yo, dude, your brain's a bit fucked up. A little bit sort of in the Chris Benoit category. For those that don't know, Chris Benoit was a wrestler who ended up murdering his wife Nancy and his son Daniel, and then hanging himself with his weight machine over the course of like a weekend. Now, He was known to do steroids, and when they examined his brain during the autopsy, they found out that he had the brain of an 80-year-old Alzheimer's patient. Alzheimer's is something that addles your brain at old age. So, for a 40-year-old man, or however old he was, he had a really, really fucked up brain, and the reason for that is all the chair shots he took to the head, because, yes, back in those days, not even really about 10 years ago, I think it was, before they stopped, people used to take chair shots to the head. Now, these chairs are not made of steel like they claim they are, but they're still heavy metal. They're not steel, though. But yeah, they just used to take them straight to the head, and he also had a finisher, which was a diving headbutt, which often he would miss. Like, the person would roll out of the way, and he'd literally headbutt the mats, which isn't half as springy as a lot of people think it is. So he took a lot of blows to the head, so that's why his brain was fucked. So he ended up murdering his family. Probably largely due to that, but personally I think it was a domestic dispute, because apparently him and his wife weren't getting on that well. I think he killed his wife out of anger, because, you know, she was cheating on him, or he thought she was, or something, or they just had an argument. And then a couple of days later, he was like, shit, what do I do? Do I tell my kid I murdered his mother and I go to jail for the rest of my life and the kid's got no parents? I think he decided the best thing to do was to kill his kid, rather than tell him. Which, no, that's not the best thing to do. Hey, how about just don't kill your family? But hey, I'm sure having an adult brain made it so that he wasn't really that conscious of what he was... made his thought process kind of fucked up, I guess, would be the best way to say it. Anyway, so back to Daniel Bryan. They told him basically, hey, your brain's kind of fucked up. You can't really keep wrestling because you've had so many concussions in your life that you're gonna end up dead or insane like Chris Benoit. Essentially is what they told him. Like, probably not in those exact words, but that was what they were getting at. So he recently retired, like a couple of weeks ago. He came out on Raw, announced it. If you haven't seen it, go look up Daniel Bryan retirement speech. Again, if you don't care about wrestling, it was one of the most genuinely... like, really awesome retirement speeches that I've ever seen. Like, again, if you want to know why people like Daniel Bryan, that is why. Again, I'm not a huge fan of the guy, but that retirement speech made me realize what a lot of people see in him. Like, he's genuine, and it was one of the best retirement speeches I've ever seen. I guess that's just where I'm going with that. Now, perhaps more importantly, during the retirement speech, just as Vince, who is the COO, the owner of WWE, was walking out with his daughter Stephanie, who's also a co-owner, Titus O'Neil, who's a pro wrestler, grabbed Vince by the arm, basically to say, like, ladies first, so that Stephanie could walk through first, because they have, like, what's called the gorilla position, which is where you stand and your music plays and then you come out. It's where you wait to be, where you wait for your music to play so you can come out to the ramp and do your posing and your entrance and blah, blah, blah. So they were going backstage through the gorilla position. He essentially just pulled Vince and said, like, ladies first. Apparently it's a joke, and there's footage online of Vince pushing Titus O'Neil back, like, looking kind of pissed off and then straightening up his suit. And this is not a storyline, just so we're clear. This isn't something they did for the cameras. You could barely see this. There had to be, like, fans with their cameras and shit to get a decent shot of this. So yeah. Then, a few days later, they announced that Titus O'Neil has been suspended for 90 days. so basically, this guy, and they did reduce it to 60, but oh, lucky him. This guy, for joking around, pulling on his boss's arm, saying, hey, let your daughter go back first, because, ladies first, got suspended for 60 days. Almost 90, and apparently was almost fired, but Triple H, who's Stephanie's husband, and a couple of other people had to talk Vince down from firing the guy. And by the way, this happened during Black History Month, and Titus O'Neil was a black wrestler, just to kind of add insult to injury. They almost fired a black wrestler for pulling on the boss's arm during Black History Month. And the thing is, Vince McMahon is fucking nuts. For those that don't know, yes, he plays a nutty character on screen, but the guy on screen really isn't that different to the real Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon is like a fucking tyrant of a man. People do not like working for him. Yes, he's got some friends like Shawn Michaels, Triple H, but a lot of people do not like Vince McMahon. He's insane. I was still in shock that this happened. Like, you actually suspended the guy for 60 days and almost fired him for pulling on your arm. Now, I can understand. Here's the thing. If I was in Vince's position and someone yanked on my arm, the thing is, Titus is a big guy, but so is Vince, to be fair, even though Vince is 70. Maybe it kind of hurt. I mean, or worse, turn around and say, hey, don't do that, or you'll get in trouble. Like, how hard is it just to give the guy a warning, Or maybe at best like a fine. Fine him like $10,000 or something, which I know is a lot of money to a lot of people, but to a pro wrestler that's peanuts, right? So just give him a little fine, like a little slap on the wrist. He almost fired him over this. Vince is fucking crazy. Alright, we're at like the 45-minute mark, and I still got a lot to cover here to do with wrestling, so I'm going to try and get through this a little bit quicker, because I would like to keep these to sort of an hour, maybe an hour and a half tops. But, I mean, as a podcast, I'm sure a lot of people listen to this sort of thing at work, so, hey, the longer the better. Usually that's my opinion, but hey, anyway, I got things to do is what I'm saying. Anyhow, so, we covered that. Recently, WWE had a pay-per-view. A pay-per-view is a thing that you pay per view. Basically, it's like a big... How do I describe a pay-per-view to someone who doesn't know what wrestling is? Basically, like, they have Raw, right? Which is like the wrestling show, where they build up storylines and stuff like that. And then the pay-per-view is usually where the title matches happen and the storylines culminate. Like, usually they end or stuff like that. So this pay-per-view is the last one before WrestleMania. WrestleMania being the biggest WWE pay-per-view of the year. They're going to have like 100,000 people there in Texas. It's going to be a big deal. So this one was called Fastlane. And it happened about a week ago, I think. Fastlane fucking sucked. The first hour or two was pretty good. It had some good matches. And then, oh my god. They had Edge and Christian come out. Which, by the way, I'm listening to music right now whilst I'm talking. And Edge's theme is playing. I didn't do that intentionally, but holy shit, that's weird. Like, I'm just listening to a playlist of music, and there's like hundreds of songs on this playlist. Edge's theme is currently playing. What are the chances of that? 1 in several hundred. That's fucking weird. Anyway, so they had Edge and Christian come out. Edge is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, in my opinion, certainly one of my favorites. Christian's pretty damn good, was nowhere near as successful as Edge. They used to be in a tag team called Edge and Christian. And they were also in the Brood with Gangrel. Stuff like that. But they're both retired. So they came out to essentially just promote the fact that they have a new show coming out on the WWE Network. The WWE Network is a network that you can subscribe to where you can watch like all the pay-per-views, all the old shows, like the old Raws. They have like tons of old shit on there, as well as the new stuff. And they have network-exclusive shows, some of which are pretty damn good. Some of them go sort of behind the scenes on pro wrestling and stuff like that. Anyhow, so on the network is going to be a new show with Edge and Christian. That's what they were out there to promote, which they did. And then The New Day came out. The New Day is a 3-man stable who are the current tag team champions, and they're heels, so they're bad guys. So they came out and they were insulting Edge and Christian, and be like, you're old, you're past it, your catchphrases are outdated, and, one of Edge and Christian's catchphrases is that they have a 5-second pose for those with flash photography. Flash photography isn't really a thing anymore because of, phones having cameras and shit. Though again, they do still flash if it's dark, so I don't know. But anyway, basically, they were out there playing the bad guys, being like, you're old, you're past it, your catchphrases suck, blah, blah, blah. And then Edge and Christian was shooting back with like, hey, you're just a ripoff of us, and that was about it, really. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And then it got terrible. Then, for some fucking reason, I think it was the New Day started insulting another, it was the New Day, they started insulting another stable called, what are they even fucking called? I can't bloody remember. But basically, it's like Del Rio, Wade Barrett. Who's even in the state? Sheamus and some other motherfucker. Rusev. Essentially, they're like a European stable, basically. And they have like this, music that plays. It's kind of like European music. And, again, I can't remember the name of that group. It doesn't matter. So they came out after being insulted. They're also heels. So they're bad guys. So bad guys were calling out bad guys, which is something that never really happens in wrestling because it just doesn't make sense. Because usually you want a good guy against a bad guy because you have someone to root for, even though generally the bad guys are pretty boring, so usually people cheer the bad guys. Did I say that right? Usually the good guys are pretty boring, so people tend to cheer the bad guys because they're more interesting. For example, the New Day, they're very popular. Even though they're heels, they're very popular. So anyway, this heel tag team called out the heels. Then they started throwing insults back and forth. They got in the ring, threatened Edge and Christian. Edge and Christian got out of the ring. And then Edge and Christian, along with the New Day, who they were just having arguments with, started insulting this group together. So that was weird and made no sense. But then on top of that, one of the New Day has a trombone, which is Xavier Woods. A lot of you might know him because he's got a gaming channel on YouTube called Up Up Down Down or something like that. Charismatic guy, I like him. But anyway, so he was blowing the trombone, he was just blowing it sort of like dun, 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 just like that. And as he was doing that, Edge was chanting in time with it, going, "Watch our show. Watch our show. Watch our show." It was so cringe. I don't think I've done it justice by my description for how cringeworthy this was. Also, it made no fucking sense. You argue with the New Day, then the New Day call out another heel team, which made no sense, and then you team up with the New Day to insult this heel team. It was so fucking weird, and it was just bad. The comedy was just, it wasn't funny. It was the most important part. It was weird and bad in equal measure. It sucked. It fucking sucked. And then, of course, at the very end of Fastlane, who wins this triple threat between Roman Reigns, Brock motherfucking Lesnar, sure a lot of you know him, and Dean Ambrose, who a lot of you might not know, but quick heads up, Brock Lesnar has won the UFC heavyweight title. UFC is a legitimate MMA combat sport. Brock Lesnar's a tough fucking guy, basically. Like, legitimately. Unlike a lot of pro wrestlers who aren't. They just play tough guys. He genuinely is. So, Brock Lesnar almost never loses a match. As he shouldn't, because he genuinely is one of the toughest men on the planet. Dean Ambrose is extremely popular. Lots of people love him. I actually kind of can't stand Dean Ambrose because I don't think he's a good wrestler. He's entertaining on the microphone, but like if you watch his fake punches in the ring, he has the worst fake punches I've ever seen in my life. Like if you can't fake punch, don't punch, motherfucker. It's terrible. Just stop it. Also, his weird thing where he falls backwards onto the middle of the rope and then does a clothesline off of it probably sounds pretty cool from my description, but looks really fucking awkward in action. Like, really, really unnatural and awkward. So that's why I don't like Dean Ambrose. But anyway, the point is lots of people love him. Lots of people love Brock Lesnar because he's a badass. Roman Reigns is the new John Cena. And I'm sure you know what that means even if you don't know pro wrestling. It means they are shoving him down everybody's throat. They are pushing him to the very top of the mountain continuously. He is the man, because Vince has decreed it. People are rebelling against this. People are booing him like they started to boo John Cena when John Cena started getting really shoved down people's throats. Difference is, at first people liked John Cena. John Cena was actually very, very popular at the beginning. And to this day still is. I mean, he's got a lot of haters, but he's still got a lot of fans. Roman Reigns, he basically got booed out of the building when he won the Royal Rumble a couple of years ago. And has been booed significantly for the majority of the time since then. There's been a couple of times where the crowd has been on his side, but not very often. People generally don't like Roman Reigns. The women love him because he's a beautiful man, but the men, and even a lot of the kids, just don't. So, yeah, Roman Reigns won this triple threat, as everyone knew he would. So it's going to be Roman Reigns against Triple H at WrestleMania. Fastlane sucked. That's what I'm saying, it sucked. Alright, so, on to some more interesting news, but also very strange, and I'll go over why it's strange in a second here. The day after Fastlane, because the pay-per-views are on a Sunday, is Monday Night Raw. Because, you know, it's on a Monday. So on Raw, at the very beginning, Vince McMahon announced that there's going to be a Vince Senior Award for excellence and blah blah blah. Had a trophy and everything. Obviously an angle and not a legitimate award. So who does he give this award to for being like, you know, the greatest of all time? His daughter Stephanie. Alright, fair enough. So then, as she's about to give her acceptance speech, Shane McMahon's music plays. And for those that don't know, Shane McMahon is the son of Vince McMahon, the brother of Stephanie, and he quit WWE about 7 years ago. Like, he legit left the company to go off and do his own thing, because he was unhappy for whatever reason. We don't know exactly why, but I think from what I heard, it seems to be that when Vince gives up power, Triple H and Stephanie are going to be in charge of the company. I don't think Shane liked that. So, Shane's music plays, out he comes after 7 years. Amazing! I was like, holy shit, Shane McMahon's back. And people like Shane McMahon. A lot of the McMahons really are very popular. Shane is, because Shane's kind of cool. I like Shane. He looked very old, though, compared... I mean, it's not really fair to me to say that, but, like, basically he had, like, significantly grey hair, whereas last time, 7 years ago, he didn't. You know, I mean, people age, but it was just a little bit weird to see. So he came out, did his little dance thing and everything, which was weird considering he's 46 years old, but again, it's Shane, so, you know, you can accept that. Crowd fucking loved it. Holy shit. People were chanting, this is awesome, you still got it, like, the crowd were really into Shane coming back, and he teared up, like he was genuinely very happy. So that was a cool moment. And then Shane said that basically he's back because he wants control of Monday Night Raw, to which Vince responded, you do know that Raw is essentially the company. So if you control Raw, you essentially control the WWE. He said, yep, I know. And then he was talking about how he bailed Vince out years ago for money because Vince was going broke and blah, blah, blah. I doubt any of that is true. I really doubt it. But in the storyline perspective, that was what they were saying. And so then Stephanie left the ring, and then Vince was talking to Shane, and he basically said that he will only agree to that if Shane has one more match, because Shane has done wrestling and isn't the most amazing wrestler of all time, but he's alright. He does like a lot of the hardcore stuff, so like using chairs and jumping onto people and tables and stuff like that, not like the actual technical side of wrestling, the more showy weapons and things. So he agreed, and then Vince said, your opponent will be The Undertaker at WrestleMania. So let's evaluate this for a second. Shane McMahon, a 46-year-old man with grey hair, is going against The Undertaker, a 51, I think, maybe 52-year-old man at WrestleMania in Texas, The Undertaker's home state. What might be, though we don't know, but it might be The Undertaker's last WrestleMania, because he really should have retired a few years ago, in my opinion. I'm sorry, Undertaker, but you should have done. You are over the hill now. Fucking retire, goddammit. Leave with some dignity, unlike Ric goddamn Flair. Woo! But anyway. So, Undertaker versus Shane McMahon. This is so strange, because Shane is obviously the face, the good guy here. Vince is obviously the heel, the bad guy. Because when he announced this, that he wanted to control Raw, everybody cheered. Because Raw has sucked recently. And he even said this on air. This is the thing. It's been so bad recently that they've even written this on TV as into storylines. He said the ratings have gone down because the ratings are at an all-time low. Like, stuff like that. Merchandise, pay-per-views, blah, blah, blah. Just like general consensus from fans that wrestling is like the worst it's pretty much ever been in a long time. And people cheered. So, Shane is the good guy in this situation, Vince is the bad guy. So why is this strange? Well, again, besides the fact that their ages, this is in Undertaker's home state. So he will be cheered. Plus, it's The Undertaker. He's one of the most popular of all time. He will be cheered. Plus, it's a WrestleMania, which is basically The Undertaker's playground. So he's going to be cheered. So there's three really good reasons there to cheer The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Because people don't want to see him lose. They don't want to see him lose his home state. And it's The Undertaker. But he's working for the bad guy. Against Shane, who people want to win. Because if Shane wins this match, storyline-wise, he controls Raw. And people want him to control Raw because Raw has sucked recently. So essentially what you set up is that people should want The Undertaker to lose at WrestleMania so that Shane can control Raw. But it's in his home state and it's The Undertaker at WrestleMania. So people aren't going to boo him. So are they going to boo Shane? Like, it's going to be very fucking confusing for the fans there. Like, I almost feel like it's going to be sort of, either the crowd's going to be really split, or they're going to be sitting there in silence on their hands. And you don't want 100,000 fans sitting there in silence on their hands at your biggest show of the year, because that's going to be really bad for business. So I don't really know what they're doing. Also, some people are speculating that maybe Shane will get replaced with, like, John Cena or something. It could happen. I don't know. I feel like they're going to go ahead with it. I actually think it's going to be Shane against The Undertaker. I don't think they're going to fuck with this, because as much as it, for all the reasons I've described, it would be fucked up and weird, and a bad idea, essentially, I feel like now that they've announced it, they can't really go back on it. I mean, yeah, you could argue that John Cena's a big enough name that even if they do change it, as long as it's a big name, people are going to be okay with it. Which, yeah, for the most part is going to be true, but it's just going to be another letdown. You know, people want to see Shane. People were really happy to see him, and it would just make no fucking sense if he could just switch himself out, because the deal that was made with Vince was you have to wrestle in the match, and it's an opponent of my choosing at a time and place of my choosing. I don't know. Wrestling's fucking weird. I guess that's where I'm going with that. Also, lastly on the agenda, there's bits of rumors that CM Punk might be coming back. Let me just put this way. CM Punk hates WWE. He hates Vince McMahon. He hates Triple H. He has burned so many bridges with that company intentionally. His wife left. AJ Lee. She left. They also, immediately after she left, had another chick, Nikki Bella, one of the goddamn Bella twins, break his wife's, record for holding the women's belt for that long. He ain't coming back anytime soon. And frankly, I think by the time he actually might want to come back, he's going to be too old, in my opinion. I don't see CM Punk ever coming back. That's my opinion. Anyway, so that's going to do it for the podcast. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Once again, if you did, a like will really help to promote it and show me that you are into this. Let me know what you thought of the whole sort of video game mixed with pro wrestling thing. And yeah, just leave a comment. Give me some feedback, man. Any complaints, any tips, blah, blah, blah. It all helps out. And yes, I will see you next time. Goodbye.